All things are realized when emptiness is realized. Nothing is realized when emptiness is not realized. Nagarjuna. Good morning, everybody. This is your favorite aspiring revolutionary here, along with his trusty sidekick, Maddie, reminding you that we are all the authors of our own lives. A wandering author. As always, my message remains the same. Spend less to live more, and your freedom with frugality. I'm a little sweaty because we're about 4 miles into a morning hike here this Friday. One good thing about my current line of work as a freelance writer is I can decide when or when not to work and when to start. Now, yesterday we finished up talking about, or really last night, we finished talking about the Peloponnesian War. And this morning we're going to turn our attention eastward and talk about shunyata, which is the Hindu or Buddhist concept of emptiness. So, the last time we spoke about Eastern and Western philosophy, I know I mentioned the whole duality concept and how one of the biggest differences, at least in the predominant trends in Western and Eastern thought, is the duality versus non-duality argument. So, most Western thought holds that mind and body are separate concepts. Eastern thought views everything as unified, non-dual. Descartes was the first one to formalize the West's theory on dual thought, where mind and body are separate substances. But shunyata is similar to that, but it's really, the word is translated as either emptiness or selflessness, but it can also be translated as suchness or space. And it really points to an underlying inherent principle that kind of underlines reality. And it's that phenomenon cannot exist independently of one another. So this is really taking that whole nature versus nurture argument and taking it to the extreme almost. It's saying that like nature is like you can't separate the nurture aspect, like your environment, from like the actual. And it's not just for humans. Obviously, it does apply to humans, but all things only exist in relativity to one another. In fact, there's actually quite a bit of similarity between this concept and Einstein's theory of relativity. Everything exists dependently, therefore everything is empty of independent existence. Nothing exists inherently. We can also get a kind of a feel for this concept if we look at an ocean and we examine the waves. So like the waves only exist because there is an ocean, right? But we can talk about them as if they are independent when really they're like a characteristic of the ocean itself. One cannot exist without the other. The number of influences that come together to form even something we would think of as a relatively simple like a car is pretty much infinite, to the point where we truly cannot separate a thing from its influences. Think about like the leather in the seats that used to be part of an animal, the metal that was mined out of the earth, the factory, the workers who put all of that stuff together. All of these things had to come into, had to be aligned with each other just so properly to create the car that we see, right? So, in the West, we would look at those as linear, right, and independent. In the East, at least with like most Eastern thought, as in Buddhist and Hindu thought, they view things more as a coherent whole. They don't separate the causes from the effects the way we do. As a result, we cannot truly separate it from its environment. According to this view, everything in the universe is relative, just like Einstein's theory of relativity. This understanding also applies to our inner thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So, all of our thoughts, feelings, and emotions both influence the way we see the world and are influenced by the way we see the world. Which is why, just like with Stoicism, it's so important for us to, and look at that dog. I don't know that she has ever actually seen Zan before, because she has just been going crazy this whole time. Anyways, we can use mental labels in our everyday lives to create a illusory reality, but this falls away pretty quickly when we start taking these labels apart. Where does one thing end and another thing actually begin? Like, how do we know truly, like, what makes a car a car? How many parts can we take away from the car before it's no longer a car? Um, and the truth is it's really all mental labels that we define. We do not literally create the phenomenal world, as in like the world that's around us with our minds, but we do create our experience of it as separately existing objects and events. So, and I think even modern neuroscience actually corroborates that kind of view. Like what we experience as the world is not so much the true world, but what our mind represents to us as the world. That's also why schizophrenia, like, you know, they truly experience voices and stuff that are not there. But to them, that is their reality, you know? This is merely the result of deep-rooted mental conditioning, which can be unlearned. That's really one of the biggest teachings in the Eastern philosophical thought. Things exist, but not in the way we perceive them. Again, also corroborated by neuroscience. Once we recognize how much external influences define us, we can be more compassionate with ourselves and with other people. So even if, you know, let's just say like one of your parents is being really shitty for no reason, it only seems like no reason because your perspective is limited. They're probably being crappy people because of something that happened to them a long time ago. That's the whole samsara, the cycle of suffering. Current suffering is the result of previous suffering, and it continues. The Dalai Lama once said, "When we consider that everything we experience results from a complex interplay of causes and conditions, we find that there is no single thing to desire or resent, and it is more difficult for the afflictions of attachment or anger to arise." So when we really look at, oh, look at this tiny frog here. When we really look at how interconnected everything is, we can start to tease apart even the bad things that have happened to us in life, right? And we understand that it may not, the only thing that's in our control is the way we respond to these things, right? The Tibetan word that describes this complete level of realization translates as complete joy. Because once we completely realize these things, we're able to let go of things that are holding us back from psychological, intellectual, and spiritual security. And then we'll end today by talking about the 3 levels of prajna, or wisdom. It's a Hindu word for wisdom. And the 2 truths, the 2 types of truths. So, prajna, wisdom, it's similar to the Western concept, and I think that you'll find some truth in these descriptions. There's 3 levels of it. The first one is the wisdom one attains from hearing, literally reception. And I'm sure, you know, anything, the more you hear about it, the more you understand it, and that's literally what this type of wisdom is. Then there is the wisdom one attains from thinking. There is a different kind of understanding that you cultivate whenever you contemplate something deeply, or reflect on it deeply. It deepens your understanding. And then the last one is the wisdom one attains from meditating. And this is more experiential wisdom. I'm sure you guys know just how in life there are just certain things that you cannot truly understand until you have lived through them yourself. And that's just the way things are. By meditating strictly, you can cultivate a direct comprehension of things. And this includes the direct comprehension of shunyata, or emptiness, selflessness, the fact that the ego is entirely a concept of our own construction. And then finally, let's look at the 2 truths. So there is the conventional and ultimate realities or truths. These are pretty simple. I'm sure there's some actually direct concepts in the West that kind of correlate to these. In fact, in Descartes' meditations, conventional truth is how things seem or appear. It's the way our mind represents the world to us. And then there's ultimate truth, and that's how the things really are. These are not contradictory, though, at least in Eastern thought, but rather complementary. We're seeing different sides of the same concept. An analogy for this is magicians conjure up fantastic illusions, and although regular people fall for them, the magicians understand the trickery. So if you're aware of these 2 types of truths, we can be cognizant of both of them at the same time. Anyways, it's really all I've got for you guys today. This dog, I think, threw away my, the leash. Oh no. Well, I'll have to find that. This is a wandering author here, reminding you that we are all the authors of our own lives. As always, my message remains the same. Spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. What are you guys doing to inspire, uplift, and empower your local communities today? Because this world isn't changing unless we all do our part, and you can count on me to do mine daily. Until next time, I love y'all.